Call to order, please. Luke, could we have a call of roll, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Here.
Pearson. Willenbring.
Here.
Campbell is absent. Stolarski also absent. McCauley.
Here.
Diata.
Here.
Hagan.
Here.
Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First question. Luke, we don't have any minutes from last meeting, I take it?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda that they wish to propose?
No.
Seeing none, I ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Agenda is approved. First is the open forum. This is open forum for opportunity to be heard and on things that are not normally an opportunity to debate, for things that are not on the agenda as well. We limit it to no more than 20 minutes total, and so each speaker can have 3 minutes. So if there's anyone who wishes to speak to items that are not on the agenda, please step forward and make comment. And again, that's not on the agenda, not the two topics below.
Brad Medved, 7601 31st Street North. This is more of a general question. On these agenda items, are we then can come up and make our comments? Or is this the period to make our comments now?
It's a public hearing, and you get opportunity after the reports are given, and we hear from the constituents, the main people on the
Okay, so
motion. But after that, is it a public hearing? Yes.
okay, so afterwards would be the time we can come up and
Correct.
make our comments. All right, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else who wishes to make open forum comments?
I'll speak.
Hi, my name is Douglas Nelson. I live on 4th Street Lane North. That's the cul-de-sac that's right north of where this MWF, can you hear me okay?
But my question
Development.
is this, are you talking on something that's on the public hearings that are coming up?
Well, it's actually one of the two on your planning commission agenda today.
If we
So
could
you want me to
hold for
defer?
the public hearing part of
Okay,
that.
all right.
you.
Somebody said this, I think he was an actor. I'll be back.
Anyone else have something that's not on the public hearings that are coming up? Seeing that, I close the public forum, open forum, and bring it to old business, which you have none. So first order of new business is a public hearing on the MWF Properties LLC, 390 Helmo Avenue North, a planned unit development amendment. Discussion. Luke, or is it Max? Max, you're up.
Thank you, Planning Commission, and good evening. Before us tonight is a request for a planned unit development amendment at 390 Helmo Avenue North, located at the northern end of the Helmo Station PUD area near the border of the Oak Run Shores neighborhood. This site is zoned for the Helmo Station PUD, where this 2.7-acre parcel is designated for high-density multifamily with specific performance criteria. The applicant here is proposing an amendment to the Helmo Station PUD to allow the maximum height at the specified parcel to be 4 stories rather than the 3 stories currently allowed. This request is tied to a planned 133-unit multifamily apartment building by the developer, which will be considered at a later date. A concept plan was previously considered by the City Council at a council workshop on August 8th, 2023. During this meeting, the council voiced majority support for the concept plan. Here, the developer is looking to receive approval for the updated maximum height prior to pursuing other approvals. The existing 3-story limit for this parcel was originally intended to provide a smaller visual footprint as a transitional space between the existing Oak Run Shores neighborhood and the Helmo Station PUD area. In exchange for the flexibility in maximum building height, the developer has proposed having a much larger 40-foot setback on the northern end of the site in order to reduce the visual footprint of the site. Here we can see a rendering of the proposed 133-unit apartment building submitted alongside the PUD amendment request. As you can see, there is a much larger setback visible than the other developments in the Helmo Station PUD. To help ease the visual impact of the building as well, staff is recommending additional landscaping and screening in the setback area. Here we can see an additional view of the proposed building from the northwest perspective. To conclude, staff is recommending approval of the PUD amendment to raise the maximum height allowed from 3 stories to 4 stories, as detailed in the staff report on file. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to the following conditions. The high-density multifamily building shall be set back a minimum of 40 feet from the northern property line. A view shed analysis shall be submitted with the site plan application to understand the visual appearance of the proposed 4-story building from the existing residential neighborhood to the north. The 4-story building shall incorporate varying roof lines and articulations. The developer shall install additional landscaping between the northern edge of the high-density multifamily building and the 4th Street North frontage for additional screening. The additional landscaping shall be reviewed at time of the site plan application and satisfaction of park dedication requirements in accordance with the city's adopted fee schedule. As a reminder, this is a public hearing and the developer is here with us in attendance. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions regarding this request.
Thank you, Max. One question I've got, I'm not sure from the report if there were any or when the process would be for meetings with the neighborhood.
Ultimately, that would be up to the developer.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Max? Anyone from the commission? Okay. Would the developer like to make any opening comments?
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Matt Yetzer. I'm with MWF Properties, 7645 Lindale Avenue South in Richfield. Appreciate your consideration of the request here. We feel that the proposed PUD amendment is a fit within the community, given the surrounding uses in that area, the vision of the city for that area being a transit-oriented hub. We're hoping to do our best to limit the impacts on the existing residential to the north with the increased setback that we mentioned on that north side, along with the variation in exterior materials that Max mentioned as well. So you mentioned a meeting with the neighborhood. We haven't done that yet. As the report mentions, after this step would be a more complete site plan application, which we would go through once we get closer to a potential construction start. Throughout that process, when we get to the more detailed planning, we'd be more than happy to set up a time to meet with neighbors and gather their feedback on the proposal and give them a little more information on what we're planning. Aside from that, thank you again for the consideration, and here to answer any questions from the commission or from constituents here.
Any questions for the developer from anyone here? Thank you very much. You'll probably get some questions in a little bit, I'm sure. Anything further from staff before we open up the public hearing? Okay. With that, I open up the public hearing on the planned unit development amendment, public comments and rules of conduct. We usually limit it to no more than 3 minutes per person. Be respectful of all those present. Try not to duplicate comments from previous speakers so it doesn't get too repetitive. And with that, anyone wish to come forward?
Jim Trudeau. I live at 7584 4th Street Lane North. And if you have a little map here, I'm sure you, from the original plan, if I'm laying in bed, this building is directly outside my view of sight, which now, because you took all the wildlife out of there, You know, no more wild turkeys running through our property, no deer. You took them with 150 trees for your little bus that you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket, that this bus line is going to bring all this economic development to the city. You got 328 units in impacts, the 7-story that you propose or is building. They've rented 10 so far. I mean, that's gangbusters. Boy, how can we put up with all the traffic? You got the bridge coming across. At 5:30 this morning, I got up to use my restroom, and what do I hear? Beep, 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 beep from all the backup alarms on the equipment. And it wasn't Ames Construction doing 4th Street. You know, they're a fine contractor, the greatest in the state. It's the people building impact. You know, it used to be 7 to 7 you could do building in a city. And I don't care what city you lived in. I was in the underground construction industry for 45 years. You don't start at 5:30 in the morning and then work till 8:30 at night, hearing beep, beep, beep. If you look at your master plan and the gentleman from the developer, which is, you might as well let people know what it is, it's owned by Cornerstone Development, First Edition. How many more editions do we have that Cornerstone is going to say, I know it's 3, but we're not going to do it unless we can do 4. And you're going to lay back and say, oh, that's fine. That's a bunch of bull. And they're not even done with 4th Street yet. They don't even have all the bus lane in. So you don't have an as-built on this property. You're looking at a plan that might be, I don't know what the date on this was, even 2000. And like I said, I was in the construction industry long enough to know what you're looking at and your engineers, when everything's said and done, it's not going to look like it was drawn up. What are you going to do about the 48-inch storm outlet that's running from the existing pond to the new pond? They had to bury that pipe because they used to just come out with riprap down the bankment into the existing pond. Ames had to enlarge that pond by quite a bit and take this existing line and extend it, I don't know, 150 feet, and then put the end section on so it would drain in the pond. Are you going to build on that? Did you put that into your new calculations? You're not going to build on an existing. You're going to put parking on it? All right. You can do that, but you can't put a building on there. You'll end up like all the problems they've had up in Duluth with the storm sewer just bursting in a 100-year flood, and all of a sudden, oh gosh, we're at a 100-year flood. Now what do we do? You got homes falling into ravines? That's not fictitious. That happens. I sold enough pipe up in Duluth to know. So you got to get a as-built, and that's not going to be done for another year. You're not going to know exactly what's underground. I guess my 3 minutes is up. Doug, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Douglas Nelson. I've lived on my little piece of heaven, 7560 4th Street Lane North, it's cul-de-sac. It was the last one to be built in Oak Run Shores. I moved in March 2004 with my beloved wife. And just to add what Jim is saying here about the build, I know you said it's limited to 3 minutes and I'm not supposed to, but I'm concerned about the noise, about the value of my property, and most importantly, I live in a FEMA floodplain. I don't have a wand here or the map of where we live, but when you enter our 4th Street Lane North cul-de-sac, the first 3 buildings are in a FEMA floodplain. The marsh behind us is also part of that floodplain that drains underneath the new 4th Street Lane North into that pond, which Jim just mentioned. That's also in a FEMA floodplain. There's another part of the development that's also in a FEMA floodplain. So that's my concern, is flooding and the proper design by you folks from MWF Construction or Properties to safeguard my property. Because when I die, because of Parkinson's disease probably, this property is going to my beloved son. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is the impact of this development on my property. In this cul-de-sac, in this cul-de-sac, there are 7 buildings. They're not townhouses, they're twin homes. So there's 14 twin homes. My twin home next to me sold in April of 2023 for $394,000. So the total value of our cul-de-sac, market-wise, is over $5 million. So what's the impact of this property development, high-density housing, et cetera, going on south of 4th Street that's going to impact my property? Is it going to go up or is it going to go down? What's going to happen? So
Thank you.
that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. And I see Mr. Ingwertsen is not here. I wish he were here. He's your liaison, right? The council person? Did you usually attend these
The mayor is
meetings?
here instead.
He's here? Good. Well, I'm glad that is the mayor here?
Mayor is here.
Outstanding. Mr. Mayor, thank you for listening to me and my late wife 4 years ago when I spoke up here. I voted for you. I know this is a political statement. I voted for you. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Bob Beadle. I'm representing Colleen Briggs tonight, whose dwelling lives at 7590 on 4th Street Lane North in Oakdale, near the project. My background is I spent over 30 years as a condemnation commissioner for Washington County. I retired that a couple of years ago. And in my opinion, based on those almost 30 years of experience in developments and impacts on value of residential areas as well as commercial areas that are nearby or bounding or impacted by the building and new construction and the construction noise and hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 6 days a week, the dirt and dust that is accumulated on the exterior and the decks of these buildings, all of that is compensable damages from my perspective as a condemnation commissioner who worked for Washington County for 30 years. To me, they're open and shut cases based on the cases that I've heard in the past. And you will be compensating residents for loss of value because value can be determined as to what it was pre-construction and what it will be post-construction. And in my opinion, based on my experience, as well as being a manager for Edina Realty, 3 of their major offices in this metro area, there will be damages and loss of value. We had a person indicate that we've had sales in there prior to this going on. That establishes value. And we will have sales or attempted sales after this is done. And the difference will be litigated, in my opinion, and there will be compensation to these owners who are impacted. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that the owners in this area are going to be made aware of the impact on the values of their properties. They already feel it. You can hear it in the sense of their voices. You know, there's more traffic, there's more noise, there's the construction intrusion. They have limited access on 4th Street. They have to go only one direction, east. All of those are compensable. All of them. The value on these townhomes on 4th Street Lane North, and I can't personally attest to other values and different addresses, they're definitely impacted, especially the ones that sit directly on the roadways for the noise intrusion and the impact on their values. I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to put you and make the people here aware that are in attendance that they do have, there is a process for them to recover damages that are caused by this construction project. And when you start increasing, asking for another story on the building that is being proposed, that's going to be more traffic congestion. It's going to be more implications on their property values. That's all I have to say tonight. I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who would like to come forward on this one?
My name is Bill Hummer. I live at 452 Hickory Lane in that intersection of Helmo and 4th Street. Lived there for 25 years. We've owned that property. We were an original buyer in that division, townhomes. There's 80 units in there. And we have watched, the progress of the development of that property. Originally, it was supposed to be office complex. We realized that the business climate here in Minnesota has not been friendly towards business, and that area did not get developed as originally designed. We now see this property used for housing. It looks like the development of the entire property is 826 units. If you can imagine the amount of traffic that it's going to bring into that area, not just in the development phase, but to bring into that area where at one time we probably had at the most maybe 200 units in that area. And if you think of what 826 is going to do to that development, if you just say 1 car per unit, that's putting in close to 1,000 more cars. In addition to that, what we're seeing is already the new bridge as to the kind of traffic that's coming in. I came off of 694 at about 4 o'clock today and watched as traffic went down Helmo Avenue. There were 5 cars in front of me, and I pulled over when I pulled into the subdivision just to see what direction they were going. All 5 cars went across the bridge. I am assuming went across the bridge. They didn't look like construction vehicles. It was probably people looking at an easier way to get into Woodbury. One of the comments in the design of that area was that it was going to enhance the quality of life for the existing homeowners in there. I see nothing that's going to improve the quality of life. When you think 200 units 3 or 25 years ago, how can you improve on that? Yes, the homeowners, we had to pay to improve the streets in that area, which are now being torn up. If that doesn't leave a little bit of a craw in your, to have to pay to be assessed or taxed and now have to see the streets being destroyed that we paid for. And I just think that we need to consider how much of an impact that 826 units is going to have. And the developer today adding another story, he's adding 25% to that building. So yeah, I think you have to take a look at what we as existing homeowners are facing and what we've had for 22 years. I guess construction started 3 years ago on a lot of this with the gold line and things. But I think you have to think of us before we think of the developer and say, what is the right decision for that area? Thank you.
This is another comment. Remember the three, not for you, sir, you come forward.
No, go ahead and make your
I
comment.
just, the 3-minute limit, please, try to adhere to it because we're closer to 5.
Brad Medved, 7601 31st Street. While this project does not affect me, it should be noted that the Norhart Apartments that these residents are referring to have had to come back to the city council, and I'm assuming the planning commission as well, to get other amendments made, because when they built that building, they built it too close to the road to begin with. So that's one concern that also needs to be made, that these guys are adhering to their setbacks as they request. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to come forward for this? I'll ask one more.
I just have one quick question out of curiosity for being a 20-year Oakdale resident. How many of you actually,
Please come up to the podium.
yeah, hi, Douglas Nelson again. How many of you actually, can I see a show of hands, actually live south of 10th Street North between I-694 and Inwood Avenue? How many of you actually live in South Oakdale? Anybody? So nobody's really ever, have you ever seen our property, the cul-de-sac?
I drive by it quite often.
Good, good for you. So then you know our concerns firsthand. That's all I want to know. Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask one more time. Anyone else wish to come forward?
Just a quick, when's the next meeting?
It will be at the city council.
That'll be announced at the city council?
Luke, is it already published?
Because we got a million more questions.
Yes, it would be scheduled for the August 27th city council meeting.
Seeing no other comments, I'll close the public hearing on this, bring it back to the commission. Does anybody have any questions further to this?
A couple comments, if that's all right. The first speaker spoke about noise level. As much as I understand the noise level, it's something we don't control. It's something that with construction is going to happen, but there are the limits of between 7 and whatever time. We'd hope that they'd adhere to it, but we do not control that. It always has been a plan, a future development. So there was going to be dirt issue, noise issue, and dust issue. Hopefully not as much as what you're getting, but there's always going to have that. The other comment was as-built, as the term as-built means, is as-built. So which I think what you're looking for is more for prints of actually the layout, the plan. As-built will happen after the fact, after the building is complete. The drain issue, that they moved the drain, covered up the drain, not familiar with it, but I would hope that somebody here is also looking at that as well, and being made aware of that. The second one talked about the noise. Again, we have no control. Value of the properties. It's a good question. It's a good point. There's no control over that. I mean, who knows how that's going to go. Third one has the same thing as far as the noise, the dirt level, and the compensation for damage. That's an area that you would know better than I would, so I'm not going to try to compete with that without knowing everything about that. So the office and the traffic is up there. I do know that. I live just north of 10th Street. So I walk around the park. I walked around this area today. I made a point to make my walk through that area. So yes, it is close to the road. And I realize that as well. But there could have been an office building there as well, besides an apartment or multi-family housing. I just want to make comments, that's all.
Anyone else have comments?
I just wanted to thank all of you for taking the time to come in here and for your comments about the project. This is what makes neighborhood is great to involve folks that live in the neighborhood and also to comment on a developer that want to come into the neighborhood. So thank you for your comments. And to sort of echo what you just said, the land use, zoning control land use, okay? So in terms of the flooding, I hope through site plan review, city staff looked at it and sort of look at those issues at the front end to sort of mitigate problems in the future when development is completed. To that, building height, of course, we all know that there are all the routes to, well, the zoning defined or the comprehensive plan defined what the height should be in a particular neighborhood. That mechanism based on certain findings or issues to increase it. And that's all you all come in to sort of comment on that, which is great. The traffic impact I can see, my question to staff is, would a traffic study be required as part of this or not? Because that could really be an issue, in my opinion.
Ultimately, the proposal is within the permitted density that's already allowed within the Helmo Station PUD. This request is solely for the change in building height. The density already falls within the permitted density in the Helmo Station PUD.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have anything? Barring that, I guess I look for a motion to recommend approval of the planned unit development amendment at 390 Helmo Avenue North with conditions as stated.
moved.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
That's it. You're gonna build it forward.
We're a recommendation. The final decision lies with the city council. And you're welcome to come to the city council meeting at that point.
Mr. Chair, just an announcement. If folks have questions, by all means, have them contact city staff. We'd be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Good. And Luke and Max are on the city website for access. Next public hearing is on the Oakdale Marketplace Planned Unit Development Amendment and the Oakdale Station Planned Unit Development Amendment. Luke, are you or?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So before we get started here, I do want to read a statement. So prior to the meeting, in regards to this, the two PUD amendments that we have before us tonight. So prior to the meeting, the city received a letter from a private attorney and also an email from a private attorney, and those correspondences were forwarded to the Planning Commission for review and consideration. The letter and email raise legal issues with respect to a portion of the proposed ordinance. Those legal issues will be addressed in due course by the city attorney and the city council, and the Planning Commission should not address them during tonight's meeting. The city attorney will be is present at tonight's meeting if any legal advice is required to the Planning Commission on this matter.
Thank you.
So with that,
Andrew is going to do the report?
Luke will do the report. I'm just
Oh, Luke, okay.
up here. I just like to be up here.
I thought he was passing the baton to you.
not this time, Chair. So we'll have the slide up here in just a moment for the Oakdale Marketplace and Oakdale Station PUD areas. So the location of this, the study area, so again, it's two PUDs, but the area is bounded to the north by 34th Street, to the east by Ideal Avenue, to the south by the Union Pacific Railroad, and to the west by Interstate 694. So just a quick history on the planning, the vision for this area. It was originally designated for commercial uses back in the mid-2000s. Prior to the recession, the Oakdale Marketplace and Oakdale Station areas, you can see them on the map. There's where my cursor is right now, that kind of delineates the two areas. So The Oakdale station is on the left side of the screen or the west side of the area, so that includes LA Fitness, there's a multi-tenant commercial building, and then a couple vacant parcels to the south there. And then Oakdale Marketplace, that's the east side of this area, so it goes from Pins and Ideal Storage all the way east to Target and Myron's Auto and all the parcels in between those areas. Now, they are they are two different PUDs due to separate ownerships, but they essentially function as a unified neighborhood. So market changes have occurred since the original plans were developed, and there have been deviations to the area for development. Notably, if I can place my cursor here, that's where the Harlan Apartments is under construction. If you recall, they went through the approval process. And then there's also been a various amount of changes or deviations to the area. Notably Pins, that they had to go through an amendment process, and I believe also the gas station as well, several other sites. So for the Oakdale Marketplace area, I should say that the original site layout included several parcels in particular that were designated for restaurants, and two such sites have been lost, or I should say two such restaurant sites have been lost, and they've been developed for other uses. So fast forward to last year, 2023. So in response to a concept plan for a tire center there in the Oakdale Marketplace PUD area where my cursor is, the city council heard that request for the concept plan, and they directed city staff to conduct a study of the PUD area, not only Oakdale Marketplace, but again, Oakdale Station as well. So the study began early this year. The city hired WSB, and they are a consulting firm. They have planners, land use planners, and economic development specialists, and they have assisted us with the study. And you recall that the study was discussed with the Planning Commission, I believe in February of this year. And just kind of the overarching goal of the study is to determine appropriate land uses for both the PUD areas there. And the proposed amendments that we're bringing forward tonight are based on the study's findings, the consultant's recommendations, and guidance from the City Council. And overall, we are proposing allowing additional land use options for this area. So here's a look at a more detailed map with current businesses and current uses, and just for reference. Here we have the original site plan for Oakdale Marketplace. Again, this is from Pins to Target. And there are specific designations for each tract, and it is very difficult to see, and the resolution just doesn't come through and on an image, of this scale. You just can't quite see. But if you were to zoom in really close to those individual tracts, it has a specific designation. So, for example, retail or restaurant. And you can see the building orientations and the layout of the site. So here we have, this part gets a little confusing. So Oakdale Station, again, LA Fitness and the parcels to the south there. So there were originally two site plan options for this commercial area. Now, you can see that, LA Fitness developed pretty much as it is today, and then the multi-tenant commercial building virtually is depicted here as well, pretty accurately. Now, to the south for this site plan option, I believe there's a proposed or a conceptual grocery store, a couple other commercial uses. But as we know, that area is currently vacant. Here is the second site plan option for Oakdale Station. Again, LA Fitness and the multi-tenant building. And then to the south there, I believe the concept plan, if we were to zoom in closer, where my cursor is, those are proposed hotels and a couple other commercial buildings. So before I move on, I just want to take a moment to explain what the current uses are for the two PUDs. And they are commercial uses. Commercial is allowed with two exceptions. So Ideal Storage, they're allowed to continue to operate as such. And then the Harlan Apartments, they went through the amendment process to allow multifamily on that site. Now one more thing there. And I should say that with the site plans we just saw, development must be in substantial conformance with the site plans that are on file. So moving on to the proposed amendments that we are bringing forward to you tonight. So Based on the analysis that was conducted by our consultant, WSB, and that included feedback from stakeholders, also some members of the public as well, and their recommendations, the following options are being proposed for this area. And the key themes I just want to highlight: designating land use options throughout the area, and including allowing residential uses on certain lots. So we're also proposing additional exterior design standards and more signage, additional landscaping requirements. I'll get into those a little bit later in the presentation. But here, what we're looking at on the screen, and again, it's very difficult to read at this scale. I apologize for that. But this is the proposed site plan option 1, and I will cover the individual tracks as we go along. But here, first is site plan option 2. And I just want to mention that these two proposed site plans are not mutually exclusive of each other. They're meant to provide options for development of the area. So we'll start with what we call Tract A. So this is the southwest parcel in Oakdale Station, so a couple parcels south of LA Fitness. And it is abutting the railroad. So currently, this is a vacant site consisting of approximately 15 acres. What we're proposing here is to not only continue to allow commercial uses, commercial retail and office, but also allow the option for medium-density residential, 4 to 12 units per acre, to high-density multifamily residential, so 40 to 160 dwelling units per acre. So essentially, this presents a couple different scenarios proposed for how residential development could look like in this area. Again, we're leaving the door open to allow the entire site to be developed as commercial, or possibly a mixture of commercial and residential. Moving on to Tract 1, so this is the ideal storage site. Currently, of course, it's being used for commercial storage. It's approximately 5 acres in size. Permitted uses that we're proposing can continue to be used as a self-storage facility, including limited exterior storage. We would look to open it up for commercial retail or office, and also multifamily residential for 4 to 30 dwelling units per acre, or in other words, townhomes, as you can see on the lower site plan option. Moving on to Tract 2. So this is the south vacant site, or excuse me, it's on the south side of 32nd Street, so south of the T intersection with Marketplace and 32nd Street. It is currently a 1.5 acre vacant site, and permitted uses, commercial, retail, office, and then also, again, we're looking to open it up for multifamily residential, townhomes, as you can see there. And one thing that we are proposing is that direct access off 32nd Street to potential individual lots or dwellings would be prohibited. Moving on to Tract 3, so this is the southeast quadrant of 34th Street and Marketplace. So currently, this is a vacant site. It's approximately 2 acres in size. Permitted uses that we're proposing. So this tract must contain at least one Class 1 restaurant as a standalone use or incorporated into a multi-tenant commercial building. The intent here is to ensure that a fast casual type restaurant would be established on site. And note that we are not necessarily prohibiting certain uses here. We're trying to focus in on what the highest and best use is for that parcel. A 2-building scenario would be permitted on site, provided that each contain a Class 1 restaurant if the square footage meets city standards. And by that I mean parking requirements, building setbacks, and so on. Now, there would be a drive-through or drive-up service that would be an option here for either restaurant, provided that, again, city standards are met. Moving on to Tract 4. So this is the northeast quadrant of 32nd Street and Marketplace. So in other words, this is the larger vacant area just immediately south of McDonald's on the west side of the Target parking lot. Currently, this is a vacant site, about 5 acres in size. Permitted uses that we're proposing here: multi-tenant commercial retail, multi-tenant office, Class 1 restaurants, and then more than one building would be permitted on the site, provided it meets certain standards, and then a mixed-use building would be permitted, provided that commercial and residential is contained within a single building. Moving on to Tract 5, so this is the south portion of the Target parking lot, currently just a grassy area. It's vacant, it's 2.75 acres in size, and the proposed permitted uses that we are presenting here include commercial retail, office, and Class 1 restaurants. And we would like to know, and we actually would like to welcome the commission's input on whether fast food, convenience food option would be appropriate here. The property owner actually expressed interest in opening up some options here, and yeah, we would certainly like your feedback on that. Now, more than one building would be permitted on the site, provided that it meets city standards. And finally here, just a couple, or several additional proposed standards that we want to cover. The first one is a joint pylon sign off Interstate 694. And the intent there is just to increase the visibility for this area. If you're driving along 694, it's very difficult to see because of the elevations. It's very difficult to notice that there's commercial buildings in this area. So the joint pylon sign, we're proposing that it would be allowed subject to certain conditions being met. Number one is removal of the existing billboard off 694. Number two, max height be kept at 50 feet. Number three, total square footage for the signage would be 350 square feet. And then four, it must consist of a two-post construction method with decorative materials. Moving on to the second bullet there, four-sided architectural requirement. In other words, what we're looking for is just consistent facade materials and designs on all building elevations, just so that there's no apparent back to the building, so that the entire, or all sides of the building look attractive and instantly recognizable as a commercial or a residential type use. The third item here, completion of internal pedestrian infrastructure, and really that only applies to one parcel, and that's that parcel south of 32nd Street, kind of at that T intersection with Marketplace. And whenever that site develops in accordance with our bicycle and pedestrian plan, there would just have to be a pedestrian gap or filled in with a sidewalk or a trail. And finally, additional landscaping is another provision that we're proposing here, and this is specifically for the southern parcels of the area. The landscaping, what we're proposing, must consist of a layer of dense evergreen and deciduous plantings, and that would just help provide year-round screening from this area and the residences to the south, or located south of the railroad. Before I conclude just my presentation, I would like to acknowledge that we received, in addition to the correspondence from the attorneys, we did receive a couple other written correspondences that we forwarded to the Planning Commission before the meeting, just for your review and consideration. And in terms of next steps, I know there's probably a lot of folks here in the audience, they're wondering how's this gonna all play out. So the role of the Planning Commission, of course, is to hold the public hearing, receive public comment, and make a recommendation to the City Council. So nothing is formally being decided tonight. The next step after this would be a City Council meeting. Tentatively, we would look at the August 27th meeting, and property owners who reside or own property within 500 feet of these two areas would be notified of the City Council meeting. Andy, Max, did I miss anything? Otherwise, we'd be happy to answer any questions from the commission.
Yeah, I've got a couple here. First one, define Class 1 restaurant for me, and how many classes of restaurants do we allow in Oakdale?
So, yes, good question. So,
Do we have an Oakdale, you mean?
Yes.
oh, do we have in Oakdale?
Well, have defined in the city code.
Okay. So the Class 1 restaurants, per our zoning code definitions, they include, number one, traditional restaurants, and number two, what we call cafeteria. So the traditional restaurant, that's an eating facility where food is served to a customer while they are seated at a counter or a table. Accessory use may include takeout food orders, but shall not include drive-through windows. And the number two, the cafeteria, is an eating establishment where food is selected by a customer while going through a serving line and taken to a table for consumption. Now, we also have a separate definition for convenience food restaurant, which I think what most people would understand is your traditional fast food. And so it's a bit longer. I can read it off, but maybe just the highlights here is that It's an establishment, sales of food in a ready-to-eat state for consumption, either on or off the premises. Does that answer your question?
Sure. And do breweries come in under the Class 1 then, or are they a separate class all themselves?
Very good question. We actually have a separate definition for breweries, tap rooms. That's all defined in our code as well. But
Are they going to be, would they be considered in place of a Class 1 in this area?
I think potentially, you know, we went through a big ordinance update. I forget when it was. It was a little over a year ago at this point, but we made sure that breweries were an acceptable use in commercial zoning districts. So.
Second question I had, you talk about four-sided construction. Are you telling me that you want all little boxes in there, big boxes, and if somebody came in with a triangle that met all the other requirements, the triangle wouldn't be allowed by all the boxes?
So I think the important thing is the intent. You know, regardless of however many sides of a building there are, the intent is for consistency for facade, so that there is no apparent, you know, backside of the building where it's just a blank wall that doesn't appear inviting, or it doesn't appear like you can. It's very obvious what you're looking at.
I have a question too, when he's done.
Now, you had in there, I think, 3 or 4 of these sections, you were referring to Class 1 restaurants.
Yes.
Now, Class 1 restaurants, restaurant business is tough right now. So if we design these for Class 1 only, we could sit on ground sitting there for another 20 years without anything coming in based on the current conditions in the restaurant industry. So is there any leeway in any of these plans to get rid of those Class 1s, or would that have to be amended in the future if somebody wanted to get in there?
So I think it's important to know for the particular parcel that we're really dialed in on, the Class 1, the southeast quadrant, 34th and Marketplace. So yes, what we're proposing is a Class 1, but it does leave we are leaving the door open for a drive-through option there. So essentially, you know, you could get, I don't want to start naming restaurants, but you could get a number of, you know, potentially what most people would consider fast food there on that site.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that, we're somewhat limited by our definitions in the code, but that's something that as staff, you know, if the intent is a broader definition of what a restaurant is, that's something we can work on as staff, because there's different variations where you go up to the line and they make your burrito and then you take it back to the table and eat, or you go up and you order and, you know, then somebody brings it all to the table. So just making sure we're allowing for a lot more types of restaurants is something that we can clear up in the intent, because that a lot of times the term fast casual is thrown out there. So we can work on that as staff as a follow-up if that's a desire of the Planning Commission.
And then final thing here, we have the option 1 and option 2. We're putting both of those through so you can sort of pick and choose from them once we get to the actual thing. Are we doing one or the other?
So what staff is proposing is, assuming that, you know, the amendments get adopted by the city council, as written, there are, you know, the two options, several options really. So commercial development is still valid throughout the areas, and you know, what's in the amendment. So option 1, option 2 for the individual tracks.
If I might, I'll throw in my question now because it relates to what he said. As I looked at your exhibits, the important pieces that I saw were things like the statement of direct access off 32nd is prohibited for that one section. And there was another thing similar to that, but most of these options are kind of your conceptions of possibilities, not anything fixed as to what goes in there, except you're pushing for a restaurant at that one location.
Right. Well, I should say, if the different site plan options are adopted, if a developer comes through with a proposal, it should be, or it has to be in substantial conformance with one of those options. Otherwise, well, then they would have, if not, then they would request to amend what the site layout looks like.
Okay. You had a question?
I had a question, yes, a couple. So I'm just wondering, is there a demand for office space? I mean, because it seems like that's kind of, there's a lot of open office space. And I'm just wondering why you would even consider building office space.
The analysis, the study that WSB performed for this, they touched on that. Corporate office, I think, tends to be in lower demand these days, but other office uses that our consultant had mentioned, like healthcare clinics, for example. I mean, that's a different type of office use, but would be appropriate for this area,
Okay.
as an example.
And then you were considering putting residential, in a residential area right next to the train tracks. I mean, how often does that train go by? I'm just curious if it's very active. Anyway, just sounds like an unpleasant place to live.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, on the four condition that you're recommending, the fourth talk about landscaping, but in your comment you said evergreens. I am just hoping that in the resolution spells out exactly what it is that landscaping means for sort of enforcement follow-up purposes.
That's a fair point. Thank you.
One thing I thought of too is we talked about it the last meeting I was at a couple months ago. There was some discussion that we need senior housing, and there's no proposals for senior housing anywhere. I'm just wondering, that might be a good area.
I guess, Commissioner, just to that question, we're not specifying that the type of residents who would reside here. We're simply providing possible options for, in certain areas, apartment buildings, and in other areas, townhomes.
Any other questions from the commission?
One, I'm glad to see at least you're looking at options here. The place has been open for 20 years. If a restaurant wanted to come in here by now, it would have been there, as much as I want to see a restaurant. So to your question, what type of restaurant, class 1 or anything, get a restaurant in there. If it's fast food, it's fast food. If they want to be in there, they're going to be in there. So I don't have a concern of what type of restaurants. I'd like to see the option of the commercial retail. I think it's a good thing. The world has changed since we've done this in 2005. So I'm glad to see this being opened up. Glad we talked about the landscaping. I agree that high density landscaping on the south side is a good idea if it gets to that point. Who owns the existing billboard site now? Is that a leased? Is that an owned property? Because you're asking for that to be removed for put up new signage, which is good, but someone's got to either buy them out or take care of that. And I've heard rumors of LA Fitness leaving, and I don't know if it's true or not. How would that impact this whole conversation? But for me, I'm glad to see something happening.
Do you want to address the? Sure. Well, actually, I might defer to Andy on if we can even discuss the LA Fitness.
Yeah, well, it was LA Fitness. Yeah, I mean, we don't have an answer to it, so our staff reached out to them and they said they were not closing, but we've also heard elsewhere, so we're kind of just taking a wait and see approach. We're, doing some research too on in case they did leave, like are there other fitness places that are around that same size or other adaptive reuses for that? Could the building be repurposed? Would that require some sort of amendment in the future? I guess we just don't know. At this point, it's just kind of too early in the process, and we don't even know. Like we said, we heard they weren't from when we inquired, but we just don't know yet.
I think some people have been confusing too. Lifetime Fitness might be closing, and I think they've been conflating the two.
Any other pertinent comments on this?
What was the other question before yours, Mike? Or
billboard?
Commission member? Oh, billboard, yeah. I can just quickly address that. So it is an existing lease with a property owner that's there, so that would need to be a private matter. So the way that staff has put this in there is more of a carrot option, that if the businesses, developers wanted to come together and figure out a way to do another bigger sign, from staff's perspective, having that billboard be removed, otherwise you're going to get spacing issues, is how that would come together. Now, will that come together, or does that have to come together? No. But since we were updating this, and signage was such a big part of what we heard from existing tenants out there, like how do you brand this, make an identity? We wanted to at least build an option in there.
I'm all for it. Coming from the south, going north, until you get past 34th Street, you don't know there's a complex there. So I'm all for putting up a sign early.
Signage is always a big hot topic for the businesses that go in, and that generally gets readdressed then too, so. Any other questions? Does the developer wish to make any comments on this? Nope, okay. And at this point, I'll open the,
Hi, my name is Dan Terwilliger, 13012 June Terrace, Minnetonka. Yeah, so my name is Dan Terwilliger. I'm with Launch Properties, the developer working on the proposed corner of 34th Street North and Marketplace Drive. I'll be referring to that as Track 3 today. Outside of the very strong legal argument that I believe we have, and I'll let Tim Keene, who will follow me, get into that. I just wanted to touch on a few items. A little bit of background. We've been working on Track 3 for almost 2 years now. We've been patient and continuously told to hold off on our submittals with the city as this PUD amendment has been discussed. Since marketing the site, we have been turned down by numerous restaurants, full service and quick service restaurants. The site has sat vacant since Target's opening in 2007. That's 17 years, and that's not due to lack of marketing of the site. It has been and remains available to restaurants. This site also has private restrictions from groups like McDonald's and Target. And for sake of time, I won't go into too much detail about our proposed project today. But I do want to mention that, sorry, I'm getting off track here. Anyways, I went on to Cornell Law School's website defining spot zoning. Spot zoning refers to when a piece of property or groups of property have special zoning laws applied to them that differ from the zoning laws surrounding them. The practice of spot zoning can be controversial and may be illegal. As it relates to spot zoning, I pulled the full excerpts from tonight's agenda. Per the city's proposal, they stated Track 3 must contain one Class 1 restaurant as a standalone use or incorporated into a multi-tenant commercial building. 2 buildings are permitted on site, provided they each contain a Class 1 restaurant if the square footage meets city standards. Given these restrictions or restaurant requirements are not being contemplated on any other surrounding parcel, this seems to be very similar to spot zoning. The agenda also mentions the current Oakdale Marketplace PUD, quote, designated several restaurant spots near 34th Street with high visibility from vehicle traffic. The 2 areas where restaurants were designated in the original plans did not come to fruition as other uses have been established on site. So this just reiterates that the city has tried this in the past with no success. As these amendment conversations continued at the city's Launch Properties withheld its application at the city's request. Once they caught wind that we were going to submit, they immediately placed a moratorium on this area. Per WSB's report, which is also included in the agenda tonight, they stated, in response to questions about attracting restaurants in the area, it was indicated by many that it would be very difficult to attract sit-down restaurants to this location. And then it gives an example. The city of Eagan in Dakota County is a strong retail market, and in recent development projects, the city required restaurants only to have those spaces remain vacant. This is another perfect case study on how requiring restaurants has not worked in other municipalities. To anyone that follows retail closely, you might be aware that many are closing locations right now. Red Lobster to name one. With rising wages, keeping restaurants open is very difficult. And when restaurants are looking for new locations, there's a lot of factors that play into this. In summary, I've been working on this for almost 2 years now, and we are open to restaurants going here, but they just do not work. So I'm here tonight to just ask that you guys deny the recommendation to approve the amendment to the Oakdale Marketplace PUD. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just, technicality, I believe you have to open up the public hearing at this point. So.
That's what I was intending to do, but it got derailed, so. I will be opening the public hearing. We'll hold to the same rules as before. I hope you self-regulate to 3 minutes because I'm not really timing you, but we've greatly exceeded the 3 minutes in the previous one, so please try and contain yourself to 3 minutes and 20 minutes total. With that, I open up the public hearing.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Dan Regan. I am also the principal of Launch Properties and the applicant of the project that was the origin of this whole process of studying the Oakdale Marketplace area. Like Dan Terwilliger said, we brought a concept plan in for a 2-building development back in 2023. At the time, we had a letter of intent to build a bank and a letter of intent to build a La Schwab tire shop. It was asked of us that we come in for a city council workshop so that we could get feedback from elected officials and city staff. At the time, it was very clear that there were a lot of opinions, negative opinions about those uses that we were proposing. So, as patient and experienced developers do, we understood that a lot of the times there is a process that you must go through to arrive at the end of the road, if you will. And we entered into that a long, long time ago. And in addition to being a developer, I come before you tonight not only as a representative of Launch Properties and the applicant, but also as a longstanding member of the community. I think I mentioned it before, but I grew up in North St. Paul. I now live near the intersection of Inwood and 10th Street. I may have attended a social gathering at former Mayor Sirac's house when he and Luann were out of town on several occasions. Many, many, many years ago. I drive up and down 34th Street almost every single day. I drive up and down 694 almost every single day. I understand the micro trade area, and not only as a local resident, but also as a developer of retail properties for tenants that go on sites like this. We're very niche focused. We only do banks, national retailers, national restaurants. We do it throughout the Twin Cities, and we do it nationally. I think we have 16 projects going in Florida right now, as an example, Georgia, Nevada. We know exactly where they will go and where they won't go. And that's why we feel that the way this whole PUD amendment has been framed has been selling we're adding flexibility to the permitted uses here. And I think that there are merits to those uses that are being added in certain areas of this development, because it's obvious to all of us that it has been unsuccessful and it has been handcuffed for many, many years, whereby had the uses been broadened years ago, the whole thing might have been developed by now and considered more successful than we all know it has been. But as the applicant on the one corner that is being further handcuffed now and is being prohibited by what is being proposed on that corner, is roadblocking a good development that is ready to go right now. We have an application before the city that has been deemed complete. We can move forward with that right now, but we are feeling very much disregarded, excluded from the process, roadblocked from moving forward with a viable development on this parcel. And I'm here tonight to ask you to make a recommendation to staff to, at minimum, amend the resolution, remove the prohibition that is proposed on this corner, and think logically about what is practical and why we're doing this. We're doing this because we want this development to be more successful. The USB study that the city engaged, it clearly states to anyone who reads it, there isn't demand for Class 1 restaurants here. All you have to do is read it. Then why are we trying to further handcuff this site on one of the prominent corners in the site to a use that isn't going to happen? Think about that. So we are very much opposed, as the applicant, to the proposed amendment when it comes to that specific change to the BUD. And I just want to clearly state that and help people understand some of the context behind our opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward to make comment on this? And again, I'll say, please try and self-limit yourself to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Brad Medved, 7601 31st Street North. This is my main, where I came to make my comments noticed tonight. I live directly south of this new Harlan apartment building. I used to be able to look out between my neighbors' houses and see Imation and all the green space before me. I'm kind of disappointed that we did not get notice that there was going to be a PUD amendment to allow this apartment building. In my opinion, the only appropriate place for an apartment building would be in that outlet, or that south outlet spot south of LA Fitness, where they will have plenty of parking for all of those apartment units. Where it is currently built, there's no way that they've got enough parking for all 156 units, underground and street parking. There's no way there's going to be enough parking, so that people are going to be parking either on the streets, parking over at AutoZone SA, or even parking over in the Target parking lot and or the Pins lot as well. And so that's the primary thing. First that I wrote down was, are we going to be able to hear these legal challenges to any amendments to the PUD? Two, are these email comments going to be read aloud so those of us in the audience can hear them? I've already kind of covered my housing thing, that any high density, any housing should be located in that southwest corner south of LA Fitness. And then I totally oppose any change to the existing commercial buildings that are there. I'm all for parcel 3 for the tire change, the bank. Obviously, I want restaurants, I want commercial buildings in that space. I don't want housing. The rest of my neighbors are the same way. We want commercial buildings. We want, you had made comment earlier about the microbrewery or whatever. We want sit-down restaurants. We don't want fast casual, but we want that space filled. I also understand that that space won't get filled until the housing density increases, and that's part of our issue with that as well. 3M held on to that land north of Imation for way too long. And then also, we've got to deal with Lake Elmo now, you know, with their zoning and filling in the rest of their, that farmland that's just east of Helmo, Ideal as well. So, thank you.
Anyone else wish to come forward and make comment? Please give your name and address. And again, please try and self-limit it to 3 minutes.
I'll be short. Thank you for having me up here. Can you hear me? Sorry, a little tired. I drove 3.5 hours just to get back here for this. I moved my daughter into college in Iowa because she got a full scholarship in soccer. I thought it was very important to be here tonight. Years ago, we were promised to be restaurants, businesses in that area. And I know it was a slap in our face when that apartment got built. And I'm gonna give you guys a compliment this time, because this time you're telling all of us. Originally, there was a proposal to put 6 more of those buildings in. Thank God that's not even being considered anymore. 163 units times 7, that's over 1,000. So I'm glad that's not even being talked about anymore. I would like to have restaurants, businesses. Before I left for Iowa, the daughter's taillight was out. We ran to that AutoZone right in that thing there. And we went to quickly went to Target to grab her some stuff for her dorm before we left for the road. My other daughter works at Target. My son's girlfriend works at Penn's. We do a lot in this area. I don't want to go to Woodbury anymore to go take my wife on a date to a restaurant. I would like to just go a few blocks over, do a nice restaurant or a brewery or some type of business, even healthcare you're talking about. I mean, it'd be great to have what is that, triage care, that little things, middle of the night, instead of driving all the way to Woodbury. We all drive to Woodbury. It'd be nice to have something right here in our area. When I was overseas 10 years ago fighting for this country, that Target was a godsend to my family. My wife has 4 kids. It was easier to go to that Target when I was overseas fighting to get milk, food, clothing at that Target. She didn't go to Woodbury, she went to that Target. And sometimes at McDonald's. So that was a very critical for my family. What other families might fall in that same situation? How the world's going. So I please beg you, the original proposal was to put businesses there. I want to see restaurants and business because I will use it. I don't want to go to Woodbury anymore. I don't want to spend my money in Woodbury. I want to spend it here in Oakdale. By the way, you're talking about senior living, only a few blocks over there, huge complex being built. But that across the road, 14th, they put over 1,000 units, apartments and everything. Originally, the original plan was soccer fields and sports fields, which nobody knew. That got changed. So thank you for bringing this out in the open. Thank you for finally coming to the people again and letting us know, not like that shady business with that apartment and other things. So I give you an improvement for thank you for communicating to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward?
Chair and Commissioner, my name is Alan Dale. We're the owner of Oakdale Station. I live at 19350 Walden Trail, and I appreciate that the city is looking at a PUD for this area and expanding the uses. I think that currently and in the near and intermediate term, for our parcel, which is the parcel south of LA Fitness, the primary use will be multifamily or industrial. So I appreciate the PUD opening up the uses, and I just suggest that it be as flexible as possible and let the future developer come in and tell us what really is going to work there instead of trying to force feed the uses. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll do this in 1 minute.
Okay, I appreciate it.
You bet. My name is John Roush. I live at 5229 Manitoga Terrace. I've been working in Oakdale for 25 years. We did the biggest industrial building at the time at 36 and 694 about 20 years ago. And I'm the broker for Mr. Dale. I've been working on this, the 16 acres immediately south of LA Fitness, probably now for about 12 or 15 years, and I should have been fired by now for not selling it. But we cannot, nor can Dan Regan, or, you know, the folks from Avalon, make a restaurant come just because of the zoning. These people are gonna come, they're gonna spend $6-7 million on a restaurant if the market is there for it. So just by narrowing down the zoning for a restaurant is not necessarily gonna make it happen there. So we appreciate you broadening the PUD zoning as is being proposed by the city staff. And if you were gonna, you know, do something with the restaurant, we'd ask that you maybe separate the two considerations, making multifamily and allowed use on the 16 acres. We've seen a lot more interest in that world than we have anything else. And I know we spent a lot of time with different city consultants and in city meetings going through the PUD zoning, and this is the flexibility is the result we're looking for. The world's changed after COVID, and you know it's really hard to stick with zoning that's been put in place 20 years ago or prior to COVID. So hopefully that was less than a minute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Michelle Cosgrove, 7680 31st Street Plaza. My husband and I have lived in Oakdale for 17 years in the Annas Grove complex. We attended the last planning session where we voiced concern about more residential. I, like the others, take all my business to Woodbury. Would love to see some brewery, commercial, retail property here. But beyond that, the capacity of Eagle Point Elementary, it went from 350 to 700 students 2 years ago, and the 1,700 unit property behind Forefront is all zoned for Eagle Point. So my concern is, where is that going to take the school? We're already at 700 kids, we're at max. What will all these new buildings and residential do to that school? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members
Name and
of the,
address, please.
pardon?
Name and address. For the
Yeah, I was
record.
just introducing myself. Thank you. My name is Tim Keane, Keane, and I office at 60 South 6th Street, Minneapolis, and I am here on behalf of Oakdale Marketplace LLC. And by way of background, I should disclose that I was the city attorney that negotiated this planned unit development agreement. And at the time, the city was most interested and focused on Target, very anxious to get the Target development here, and making sure that ideal storage was limited, not going to grow, and that ultimately that would be a use that would be transitioned to a more permanent use. The rest of the property was going to be guided and controlled by the C2 district standards to allow maximum flexibility for use and development of the site. This is a staff or a city-initiated amendment, and I'm just going to focus on a couple points with regard to the process. The planned unit development agreement is a binding, it's a contractually articulated agreement that binds the city and the parties to an understanding governing the future use of the property. And one party cannot unilaterally amend the PUD in the PUD agreement. It's got to be done by mutual agreement of the parties. And the planned unit development agreement is very clear at section 16 that any amendment or modification to the agreement must be in writing and signed by affected parties or parties to the agreement. When the agreement was negotiated, the developer sought and incorporated clear articulation of vesting of rights that provides a clear roadmap for what can be done with the balance of the property over time. And based on those understood rights, they've invested millions of dollars in the property, and that is a continuing effort to develop as the area matures. But the ultimate use of the property is governed by the C2 zoning district regulations. This narrowing and layering in of new restrictions is not contemplated in the PUD agreement and cannot be accomplished without agreement of the parties to the agreement. I think you've got an issue of potential regulatory takings by hemming in one of the sites to be limited to a specified restaurant, type of restaurant. That property has been marketed for nearly 20 years with a preference for restaurant users, unsuccessfully so far. The city's own market study and report concluded that it would be very difficult to attract a sit-down restaurant at this location. I think we've heard that again and again. And to ask the property owner to hold the property until a restaurant comes along is, I think, exposes the city to some issues of regulatory taking. With regard to the moratorium, moratoriums are allowed in Minnesota, certainly. The city has exercised the broad authority to implement a moratorium, but it's a planning device. And there are limits. There is a guardrail on moratoriums. It cannot be used to target or be enacted to delay or prevent a single project. And given the sequence of events, the application, the adoption of the moratorium, it kind of looks like this was a targeted moratorium attempting to delay or prevent a single project. And I think that's highly problematic. So I respectfully request that the Planning Commission recommend denial of the proposed amendments and reboot the process and work with the developers, the property owners, and can reach a mutual understanding of a future amendments. That's the way the PUD agreement process works. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hopefully not redundant, please. Not that that was redundant, I just wanted to make sure we don't get redundant ones. Seeing no one come forward, I'll offer it once again if there's anyone who wishes to come forward. Otherwise, I will close the public hearing.
Chair and Commissioner, my name is Alan Dale. I have a question. It's my understanding that these are two separate PUDs, or is it one PUD?
Two separate PUDs,
Yes.
amendments.
So the PUD for Oakdale Station, we're supportive. We are supportive of the PUD for Oakdale Station.
Okay,
Thank you.
very much. Resetting the clock. Anyone else wish to come forward? Otherwise, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. We're going to bring it back for comment here. Anyone else have comments on the commission?
Again, like I said before, I'm glad to see there's expansion of use, flexibility of use. I have an issue with some of the, people are talking about the restaurant. Restaurants are going to be here, they're going to be here. They would have been here by now. I go to Woodbury myself. I would prefer restaurants there. If they're going to come, they're going to come, but right now they're not coming. So to hold a project up for waiting for a restaurant, I don't agree. So I'd like to see anything be built there, commercial, retail, in that sense. The southern part, you talk of the southwestern part of it as far as becoming housing, that seems like a good fit for that area over there. The rest of the area, we could become much commercial, retail as possible. I am concerned about moving ahead with this because of the background, I don't want to use legal issues, but questions out there unanswered. I guess if we don't know that yet. So for us to approve something without knowing what could happen doesn't seem to make sense. Someone used the word reboot. Kind of like that idea myself. Reboot until we come back to better answers. But I'd like to see this expanded and flexibility of the site itself, but maybe it just needs another relook at this. That's all.
Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, I'll throw my 2 cents into on the comments. I had talked with others before this. I don't agree necessarily with withholding the rights of the property owners to do a lot of the things they wish to do with their properties. So I'm a little hesitant on that one aspect of it. And I would urge City Council to consider taking it out. The rest of the ordinance change would be acceptable, but that part I do have a big problem with myself. So I guess that's my recommendation to the City Council going forward on this. If we pass both, just to reconsider that particular parcel, because I just view it as too restrictive on personal property. So that said, any further discussion on we'll be taking each ordinance individually. You can make your votes according to that. The first one, any further comments from staff at this point, though? I'll offer that. Nope.
No additional comments, sure.
Okay. Make sure I get which one. We'll take Oakdale Station first, which I believe there is no major controversy over. So I look for a motion to recommend the approval of the Oakdale Station Planned Unit Development Amendment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
That one passes to the City Council. The next one is the motion to recommend the approval of the Oakdale Marketplace Planned Unit Development. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
That one would appear to fail.
3 to 2.
3 to 2.
Yep, 3 to 2. It will be, of course, taken up by the City
Yep.
Council because we only do
I thought I heard
recommendations.
3 ayes and only
Yeah.
2. Oh, you were, I apologize, I didn't hear that.
Okay.
Okay.
City Attorney, did you catch that at all? Or
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. We heard something different. I think you should take a roll call vote on that one so you know
roll
exactly
call?
what it was. So the motion was to recommend the Oakdale Marketplace PUD. That was the motion. So I would suggest you do a roll call vote so you know exactly what the count was.
Okay. If you do the roll call, please.
Pearson.
Nay.
Willenbring.
Aye.
McCauley.
No.
Diata.
Aye.
Hagan.
No.
And again, to place this in context, we are a recommendation body. We are not the ones who make the decision. So it does go forward to the city council at this point with our recommendation. Moving forward, staff liaison update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Couple updates on the July Planning Commission applications. So the Murray conditional use permit, so that's the oversized shed that was recommended for approval by the city council at their past meeting. And then the Tanner's Lake redevelopment, that is kind of still in limbo. City council date for that action is to be determined at this time. And then our submittal deadline for the September Planning Commission meeting, that's actually next week, so we're not quite sure yet if we're actually going to have a September meeting. So, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any updates from the commissioners? Seeing none, I will move on to council liaison update, which would be Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. First and foremost, I just want to,
Can somebody shut that door? So loud.
Andy, could you get that for us? Thank you. No, first and foremost, I want to thank the commission and everybody who's attended. The last two meetings have been very busy for the Planning Commission, tackling big topics. You know, big development projects, PUD amendments, never easy and always a lot of work to get through those. So I think this commission has done extraordinarily well in, welcoming conversation, having a thorough debate. On behalf of the city council, we really appreciate that. It is very helpful for us to take all of that into consideration. So thank you. In terms of work that the city council has going on, it's budget season. Pretty much from May through December, we are working on the next year's budget. And so we have been working our way through with our city staff through the individual departments, employment requests, bringing on additional personnel. We just went through our utility funds, and we've taken more recently a look at our park fundings for our park projects for next year. So a lot going on. There will be more updates as we get closer to the preliminary levy adoption in mid-September and then final budget adoption in December. So keep an eye out for those. Other than that, I am happy to answer any questions you may have. Nothing? All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Zabel. I look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Seeing none, we are adjourned.